Hi, welcome. On this video, this is part two of my response by way of this podcast discussion between Bill Church and Ivan Balbanov. And here I'm filling in the gaps. I'm talking about what you're not going to hear any other trainers out there actually talk about as it relates to the actual, real problem in the dog training world. Talk about the issue with appearances, talk about the issue of why it is that so many dog owners end up with a counterfeit picture of change. Dogs that are moving around can look fantastic in the training environment. However, still dealing with a relationship problem, and this will come out, in certain ways in terms of dogs, how they express in terms of control. You'll see it, and the inability to actually achieve a certain result. Okay, you're going to see this, this issue of the collateral damage. Okay, of what's happening with trainers who are approaching a relationship problem as a learning based exercise. Okay, and so even Ivan's how he describes his method. Okay, as in terms of no conflict. Okay. Well, guess what? There is conflict. Okay. There's already conflict once a relationship problem is underway. And so the issue about conflict is all about context. Okay. Conflict, is about context in terms of your role. And in terms of, again, I talk about what defines training itself. It's a intervention. It's not a learning based exercise. So, even when you hear certain words, terminology being used, that should already send up a red flag that those core ingredients are not being reconciled. Okay, in terms of how trainers are defining a process. Okay, so again, those core ingredients can come into anything, any process, because it is about relationship. So again, understand there's a specific kind of idea of things where you're putting more kind of focus into, it could be how you see training. Okay. But understand it's about what you're doing throughout your day. Okay. It's about everything. It's about your relationships, how you're connecting at that level. But here's the thing. Okay. When people need to change, okay, when you need to generate change by way at the social level, then those core ingredients in terms of defining what change means in terms of a certain way of things. And I talk about this whole thing about interacting with dogs a certain way as kind of your default setting. That's what is going to generate the type of change that needs to happen in the relationship with your dog in terms of a outcome, okay, in terms of the right outcome. So it needs to be addressed. You have to be intentional in terms of understanding your role. You have to understand what's going on beyond appearances. And that's what, again, when you see these trainers out there, it's just superficial. Okay. It's like they're just talking about their way or their approach. But you get into the specifics of, okay, let's have an actual real conversation here as to what does that really mean. That's where the problems start. Okay, that's where they're gonna see them not, because they're not going to go there. They can't go there. Okay, and because that's not what they're about. That's not the questions that they're asking. Okay, so but again, this whole thing about, that's why you see a lot of people just floundering around. They're bouncing all over the place. They'll go from one system to another system to another system. You're looking for answers, and they never get anywhere. They just spin their wheels maybe their whole life. They just keep spinning their wheels. In fact, interesting, Bill Church, and I have the videos on my website. He's had a couple balance trainers on there, and it's interesting the conversation saying, well, it's the narrative as well. If anyone, acts like they actually know, truly what's going on in the mind of a dog, well, they're liars, or they're not telling it. Well, that's so ridiculous to even say that. I mean, the trainers are saying the stuff that is so contradictory and so doesn't make sense. And meanwhile, what do they do when they're actually marketing their idea of things? So there's so much to unpack with all these trainers out there. If you really just take the time, apply common sense, and just take what they're saying at face value, just don't take my word for it. Just listen to some of how they package this up, and the red flag should be going up everywhere to say, and then layer it up, say, look at the state of the dog training world. I mean, see, so many people are in denial because they're working off personalities. It's just like, I like this person, so I'm just going to absorb into what they're doing or saying. It shouldn't be based on any of that. It should be based on, here's the information. What's the truth as to what's happening, and focusing on you and your dog. That's it. So, we get this whole thing about so you get this thing about training without conflict. That alone, there it is. Okay. You don't have to, I don't have to go any further than that. Okay. In fact, I have a series, you can go watch it on my as part of my member area. Anyone can be a member, is what I called it. It's a one-time payment, and I have a whole back and forth between Ivan and Larry Crone, multi-series there, going and filling in the gaps, talking about this whole thing. I break it down. In fact, Ivan, his conversation with Larry, it turns into almost it takes on the form of almost like a interrogation. Okay. Um, going at Crone about the role of remote collars. But see, trying to jockey, all these traders trying to jockey for a position, trying to carve out some little niche for themselves and say, hey, I'm different. I'm over here, these guys are over there, I'm above this. Well, I get into this, say, well, no, then that's the good thing about, once you get into understanding of what is it, okay, what is the criteria, there's no kind of ambiguity or confusion. It's here it is. Now you may not like it. Okay, that's the thing to tell people. The majority of trainers, like, they're gonna like what I'm saying, but there's clarity. There's no kind of fuzziness or wishy-washiness. It's like I put it out there. It's a question of the century. It's up on my Facebook page. There's no way around it. Okay, understand? There's no way around it. You can't get around it. There it is in a nutshell. I put it. Go look at it. Go look at the. I lay it out. No one can touch it. It isn't even about me that way. Understand? It isn't about. I'm just a messenger. I'm saying here it is. This is what it is right in a nutshell. And there's no way any of these trainers can even remotely touch that question. They can't respond to it either. I mean, there's no, good luck with that. So let's play some more of this as we continue on here.
Cool is that it is a truly pass fail. I've been to other schools where they say it's a pass fail, but everybody seems to pass, and there's just something fishy about that. And so,
Going in this whole pass fail thing, okay? I even talk about this whole thing about defining what the success represent in the appearance-based dog training community. Okay. I mean, I get into that. What does that mean?
so I know that you had a school recently, haven't you?
Yeah, well, we have a class that's happening right now. They're kind of almost going towards the end of it. So yeah, it's not an easy, definitely not an easy school. People get a little bit frustrated when they sign up, thinking that, well, I paid the money, so therefore I should get the certificate.
So he's going to talk here about you pay the money, you get the certificate. I mean, it's like way back, you have this in everything, right? With stuff. Sometimes people pay the money, they expect a certificate or whatever. But here's the thing, okay? Because you have to apply some critical thinking here. I talk about the criteria, okay? I talk about what that actually represents beyond appearances, beyond just response, okay? It's so much in terms of how trainers defining, their criteria for success. Ask yourself the question, what's it based on? Within the framework of response. You see dogs moving around doing the sit down, come stay, right? But the question you should ask, well, if what I'm saying is true about, appearance is the problem with response that way, and applying the criteria to actually, it's like the litmus test to actually establish whether perception of dogs are changing, because there is a test, okay? There's a way to establish that. Then you'll see how everything in the dog training world is completely upside down. And so, it's a complete joke. It's a complete joke, okay, what trainers are doing out there, even within their systems, right? So to say that, well, people just expect to pay their money and get their certificates. Well, they might just get their certificates anyway. Okay. I mean, if it's not about actually adhering to specific criteria the way I described, like what's it about then? Like, then you're in control of what exactly? What are you doing? Like, how are you defining that? In terms of outcomes, in terms of defining, and then people are getting a bad deal anyway, right? Because then they're not able to establish a good outcome, perhaps, right? Because they're not able to the ability to even reconcile the criteria through the proper process isn't there to begin with. Understand that. So there's so much is wrong here, okay, in terms of systems. Understand because when you once you start to get what I'm saying, you see how everything is so corrupted. It's corrupted. So to even have this conversation to me is a non-starter. I mean, it is because here, okay, because here's the thing: if you have the right process, the right criteria, it's established from day one, instantly. Okay, things are going to line up a certain way. Okay, you're going to see it. You don't wait till day 14, or if you go watch my board and train videos, I go through all of that. Okay, you're going to straighten that stuff out, and that's the way it should be. I mean, if you really know what you're talking about, if you're focused on a process the right way and the right criteria, then it's good news for everybody because then there's no ambiguity, there's no confusion. It's like, here's what you need to do. There's hope for everybody. It's not You're not left stranded or out money that way or anything like that, right? It's like that's good. That's what you want. You want to be very clear, but this isn't what this is about. Understand, this is a totally different thing going on here with trainers. Understand that.
And even though we are very explicit that that's not going to happen, it never happens. It doesn't, like, I have lost friends over this school because they didn't take it seriously. And
So he's saying lost friends over, didn't take it seriously. I would just that would be all up in the wind. Okay, to me, I'd be like lost friends over. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
and and to me, it's probably one of the most important.
Because here's the thing: if you're going to lose friends, it should be based on the truth, okay, as to no ambiguity. Isn't about some conversation where things aren't established a certain way. Um, it's like I say, truth and love, right? It's like through relationship, but it's also when we can agree on, right? It's just clear. I make it so clear about what is training, okay, what defines a process, our role in that. It's established, the criteria for that beyond appearances. So, but when you get this whole thing about appearances and stuff, then it causes to question everything. How you respond to things. What you say, if you talk about losing friends and all this stuff. I mean, but here's the thing: it's not just about Ivan here. Okay, this goes with anything in the dog training world that's based on this idea of what training is. Okay, it's like any sort of response to that about within the system itself or whatever is to me is just like up totally up for whatever you want to call it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It just doesn't. It wouldn't reconcile.
Things the school as far as maintaining the standard and integrity of what we do. So yeah, it's definitely not anybody that has done it, no matter how knowledgeable and how high IQ they may have and hands-on experience. It's quite complicated. And
There's nothing complicated about anything here. Understand, because there's a story I go back on. This is like I'll remove all the names from it. This is like a long time ago. This is like years ago. Um, was in police canine part of it, and I had got a call from a guy that I knew from a different police department, and he wanted some my perspective, some advice. He's going through training with a city agency, and he was struggling. Um, and this training program's like 3 months, 4 months. He invested time into it, and he was getting near the end, and the trainer failed the dog, failed him and the dog. And this guy came from another department, and this is a big, like a big problem. right? Because the time, the money put in, everything. He was like, Dale, what do I do? I was going to help this guy out. Um, and so, but he went and made a phone call to another agency, and it all worked out in the end. This dog, he passed and everything. But my thing that really bothered me because it was like, well, you go that far in, you should know the problems like immediately, okay? Not like 3, 4 months in. It should be like 2 days in. If you understand what the criteria is and how everything comes together, there shouldn't be any sort of you shouldn't be getting blindsided. And I talk so much about trainers getting blindsided just by getting bitten by dogs and everything else. You see all the inherent problems here, okay, within systems themselves. Because it's like, because they'll say, well, I have a system, it works. Well, it should be like, well, okay, explain that. Like, how does it work? Explain the nuts and let's get into the nuts and bolts here because I want to know. But see, if that's not happening, it's all up in the air, right? It's just like you might have good outcomes. That's not to say because influence and control are coming in to certain processes, and the individual does play a role, the dog does play a role. But when you get this whole thing about those dynamics, okay, this is the problem. It's like a roll of the dice here with a lot of trainers because they're not specific to understanding outcomes that way as to how those what defines train the way I describe. And so when you're leaving yourself out on the in the wind, so to speak, that way, say someone's stepping into a system, you can end up in a bad way, or at the end of it, like what happened with this individual, and it's just like devastating because it's like okay, and I felt, I mean, that stuck with me. That was a terrible, but that was an example of things that happen like that. I mean, there's programs, within police themselves are washing out dogs. That's just part of their wash out. They wash out so many dogs. That's just like a normal. They normalized it. It shouldn't. It's not normal at all. Okay, it's a training issue with a lot that's going on with a lot of these agencies and stuff. So there's that collateral damage effect. I understand it's that it reverberates throughout the dog training world, and people are, at the whim of that. Okay, they're at the end of that, and that shouldn't be. That should not be. So when I hear any of these conversations when these trainers talk about losing friends and all this stuff, that doesn't fly with me, right? There's there's other things going on here. I understand because it's like you should be, and that's the problem. You're leaving yourself people are left vulnerable to that type of thing, including the trainers themselves. So this is just the way the dog training world is.
And what is interesting, it evolves. It just hasn't stopped evolving. It's very crazy how, I mean, I don't know where we want to talk and what we want to talk about. You kind of prompt me with this, so now it's in my head.
Go ahead.
But what is, and it's cool. I like it. I see stuff that I teach, how it comes into the industry with 3-4 years delay. And
what does that even mean?
When I started in the beginning, I'm like, okay, well, then everybody catches up on it. So what's the point? However, my brain continues to work and I keep adding stuff. And, by the time this 2-3 years and everybody gets one idea that I have been very actively promoting, I already end up having 2 new ones. And it was very interesting to see how that mechanism, how it works, Yeah. And it goes way back, actually. I mean, it goes way, way back. However, at that time, for various reasons, but it was hard to, I guess even now it's not easy to point to where certain idea come from. I mean, I know where they come from because they're mine idea, but, people that hear it third, fourth hand, it's, and it's totally fine. It's very interesting. Even I was watching. I'm in a process of finally sending a bunch of VHS tapes to get, digitized, and until it's still possible because they have a lifespan too. And so I was watching. Let me shut my phone off. I was watching.
He's babbling here a lot, but about stuff. We'll get into some more of this as we move forward. So, but all to say again, we get into all of this, and I talk about when you hear these trainers talking about certain things, once you understand the reality as to where the dog training world's at, okay, what they've invested in, their focus, then the collateral damage is stuff. It's like you just see it's like pride and ego and all this stuff is all mixed into this stuff. And it's not good. It's not good. In situations that I've seen over the years, I shake my head, because here's the thing is like when there is a real standard, okay, when there's clarity as to what defines training a process, then that's a good thing because then these things don't happen. People can feel confident coming into training, knowing right from the beginning, okay, can put everything, connect the dots properly, they know their role, they understand moving forward the criteria to establish, to change, to define as change is happening, right? Everything's established. There's no confusion. But in the dog training world, the way it is now, the confusion everywhere. Trainers are bouncing around all over the place. They change their opinions from month to month. They're in their systems, and drawing people into their systems. But then, these podcasts, like this is like a 4-hour podcast. What are they talking about? I mean, we'll get into that because the goal here is for people who really want to know. That's my goal here is to really educate, inform, understand that, just your first thing you should do before even asking is look around the dog training world, ask yourself the question, where's the dog training world? Like, what shape is it in? Why is it that it's in all these controversies after controversies after controversies, all this infighting, divisiveness, ego and pride? Why is all this stuff all in there at such a level that the dog training world is such a mess? Like, ask yourself the question. And you have these trainers jump on podcasts and they're just all marketing their own idea of things. But when you actually start ask specific questions, that's when things start to really you step back, say, okay, this ain't good. This ain't good at all. So my goal here is to help dial people into the reality of where the dog training world's at. What defines training? These trainers aren't going to talk about it. You're never going to hear them even whisper anything I'm saying ever, because that's not what they're about. But they stay within their ideological comfort zone. They go on this thing about this back and forth, but what's that even about? Is that providing any answers when they go back and forth with these, pure positive trainers? No, it's not providing real answers. It's just jockeying for social media attention and position and just trying to sell their own way of things. It's all appearance based. That's all it is. So thanks for watching. I'll be putting out part 3 here shortly. Hope you have a great day.